And so here we are. Yesterday on the 20th of August, the long-awaited book titled Imminent, the Pentagon's Hunt for UFOs saw its official release. The author is one Lue Elizondo, a veteran military serviceman and a civilian employee of the US government who came forward and shared his insider knowledge regarding UFOs, UAPs, and the involvement of the USA with the topic to the biggest possible extent, his security clearances, and the declassified nature of the information allowed. Apologies in advance if this video is a bit chaotic, but I am currently about 1/3 into the book and wanted to share my first impressions from the reading. And boy, there is a fair lot to unpack, especially if someone is new to the topic of UAPs and UFOs, perhaps coming off the wave of the last year's congressional hearings. A few words about the author. Lue Elizondo is a former counter-espionage officer and a military member who later worked in a civilian capacity for the US government. Because of his work, especially his involvement with certain programs run by the government, he came across information regarding the UFO phenomenon and eventually, having been stonewalled and having experienced stigma related to the topic, decided to push it into the public awareness. He is one of the key people behind the presentation of the now famous Tic Tac, Gimbal and Go Fast videos depicting UAPs declassified by the military and published by the New York Times in late 2017. Ever since, he has been on the forefront of the disclosure effort, raising public awareness of the UAP issue and pressing for the transparency of it, as well as for a serious approach to this particular topic. This year he came forward with the aforementioned book in which he described his experiences as an insider. The first part of the video will contain no spoilers, so here we go. First and foremost, the book has been cleared for publication by the DOPSER unit within the Pentagon, which means that it has been verified and confirmed to contain no classified information which could impair the national security of the USA. That said, there are small sections of the text which have been redacted, not unlike what we can see in the Freedom of Information Act documents released to the public. In the book, this applies mostly to the locations which are still in use and vital for national security. The book is provided with a foreword penned by Christopher Mellon, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence in the 1990s and 2000s, and presents the author himself, the importance of his work and the importance of the discussed topics as a whole and in general terms, not just from the point of view of American security. Then there is the meat and potatoes of the book itself. The first thing I should mention here, it reads well, especially given that the author himself is not a writer by trade and profession. I caught myself getting drawn in by the narrative quite a few times as I read the book, which in my book is always a hint of an actually good read. What is a book like generally? I would say that it has a nice hybrid form which makes it a part memoir or an autobiography of Lue Elizondo and a part after-action report, if that makes sense. Especially the early chapters contain the personal story and background of the author, from growing up in a family which combined various cultural backgrounds and influences, tough upbringing, and which eventually broke apart, through a turbulent youth and eventual enlisting in the military. The personal touches, in my opinion, explain a lot why Lue is the way he is and why he does what he does. He describes his military career, which led him from a rank-and-file combat role to counter-espionage positions and stations around the globe, to his eventual service for the government in a civilian capacity. And from this point on, beware of spoilers, watch at your own risk, especially if you plan on reading the book. If you don't want to hear any spoilers, you can safely tune out of the video for now. At some point during his career, Lue was recruited into a special program running within the structures of the DoD named OSOP, or Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Application Program. It was headed by Dr. James Lakatsky, a physicist with extensive knowledge of rocketry and propulsion systems. During their initial meeting, Lakatsky asked Elizondo what he thinks about UFOs, with the question being serious. This is how Lue's adventures with the weird and bizarre started. At the early stages, he was also introduced to Robert Bigelow, a billionaire hotelier who operated as a private contractor working with the government, a person passionate when it comes to UFOs and other high strangeness phenomena, just to mention his involvement with the infamous Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. During an introductory dinner, Lue met the Brazilian general, and the topic of discussion was the series of events known as the Colares incident. It was a wave of UFO sightings and related injuries, traumas, and alleged abductions sweeping through rural Brazil in 1978. Craft with harmful influence on humans and abductions by alien craft with short great beings and told white humanoids on board were reported at the time. As Lue delved deeper into the topic, he got to work with people like Hal Puthoff, a veteran physicist studying high strangeness phenomena from the borderline between science and the paranormal. He told Lue, for example, that the Roswell crash of 1947 was real and involved a UAP which was knocked down from the sky, possibly by accident, by electromagnetic interference. The objects split into two, which crashed and were retrieved together with 4 dead non-human bodies of the pilots. After a while, Lue also gained access to and actively looked for other reports related to UAPs. And he got more than what he asked for. Even with the stigma surrounding the topic and few people willing to report such encounters in fear of having their careers destroyed, there was still enough information to dig into. The Washington DC sighting of 1952, for example. A crashed and allegedly retrieved UFO from 1950 in Mexico, and the list goes on. The OSAP group was looking for patterns in the UAP activity and it found some. First, the objects are seemingly drawn to and operate in the vicinity of the bodies of water rather than vast swathes of dry land. Next, they also operate close to military facilities. On a related note, Lue also described that while being stationed in the Middle East in Iraq, he was once summoned in his official capacity to study a strange coincidence. 2 M1 Abrams tanks disabled with their armor punctured by an unknown weapon. Whatever it was, it could not have been the standard sabot round or other forms of kinetic weaponry, as they would have caused much more extensive damage inside the hull and could not have left perfect holes with regular edges. It seems that the vehicles were targeted by some form of a beam weapon in echo of the Colares incident, where some local residents suffered burns and injuries characteristic for high-energy electromagnetic radiation. Lue also brings up the fact that the UAPs are vividly interested in our nuclear facilities. From the disaster sites like Chernobyl or Fukushima, they were observed there in high numbers, to ICBM missile silos. The UFOs have been seen there. He describes incidents from the Cold War era in which UAPs have completely disabled the nuclear ballistic missiles stored by the US in Montana and triggered a full launch sequence at the Soviet nuclear missile facility in modern-day Ukraine in 1982. The technological capability of those objects could seemingly stop or trigger an all-out nuclear war on Earth. It would explain why the Cold War superpowers had a secret treaty diminishing the chance and mutually assured destruction, involving verification of potential missile strikes for fake events. Speaking of the military still, Lue quite extensively describes the 2004 USS Nimitz encounter with UAPs, and I have already talked elsewhere about, and which was well presented by Commander David Fravor during the last year's hearing before the Congress. Lue himself suggests that the overall UAP interest in military capacity can possibly hint at some form of probing of Earth's military and defense capacities. To briefly go over other topics, he does confirm that the USA is in possession of non-human tech in the form of materials and crash remains, as well as runs reverse engineering programs intended to recreate alien technologies. But even if he knows more than he lets on, those topics would not be presented in the book for obvious security reasons. He also mentions his personal experiences as well as the experiences of other people working in the same program. They seem to experience visits of fuzzy light orbs at homes, mostly green in color, observing them at random and vanishing, as well as passing through walls. Orbs of light have been described in various UAP reports with different light colors and possibly different functionalities and purposes, with blue-colored ones having some forms of offensive capability and able to paralyze and injure humans. All in all, the first part of the book at least carries out a strong hint, perhaps driven by the author's military background, that we may be under military surveillance of an unknown force of off-world origins. The last thing I will mention for now is remote viewing, the ability to perceive events in distant locations and possibly across time as well, in a specific state of mind, which I personally understand to be similar to the Focus 10, 12 and 15 states offered by the Gateway project of the Monroe Institute, enabling the viewer to gain fleeting images and sensory perceptions of the target location, person or object. Lue was apparently trained in that technique and had success with it, and he also mentions that it has been fairly extensively used by the military to gain useful info about potential adversaries, terrorists and illicit activities. And so that is for now. I am still in the process of reading, and there will be definitely more to come in about 2 or 3 days, I believe, where I will share my further impressions and final insights about the book. So far it has definitely been a good read, especially worth it if you are new to the topic. And what about you viewers? Have you bothered read the book yourself? Do you believe the author and his claims? Feel free to share it all in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and I will see you in the next video.